Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for sticking around. My name is Bob Dekker. I'm a co-founder and managing director of Insight Advisory Partners. We're a boutique investment banking firm based here in Chicago that's focused exclusively on the food and beverage industry. I'm also a member of the ACG Planning Committee for this event, so I'm very pleased to see everybody here. I have the distinct honor and pleasure to serve as the moderator for the final group of the day, which is the CEO Strategy Panel. Now, since we're the only thing standing between you and the adult beverages, we will keep things moving along in a lively way. This is perhaps the most unique group of panelists that we've had, and I think you will find that out as we get into it. And I'd like to take just a moment to at least briefly introduce from my standpoint some of the highlights I see. Sitting to my left is Scott Mandell. Scott is the founder and CEO of Enjoy Life Foods, a better-for-you manufacturer of allergen-free salty snacks and savory treats. Scott started the business about 15 years ago, immediately after graduating from Kellogg Business School. And for those of you who may have heard a little bit or may not be aware, Enjoy Life Foods was just sold to Mandell earlier this year. So Scott continues on as the CEO of the independent subsidiary, but if we're fortunate, maybe Scott can share some salient details of that deal as we get through the afternoon. The distinguished gentleman all the way to my left is Dwight Stiehl. Dwight is the CEO of Rhodes Packing Company. It's a fourth-generation family meat packing business, and they provide a variety of protein products to some of the largest food companies in both food service and retail. Dwight and his family have been fixtures in the Chicago meat market for many years, and I think he can provide some unique insights into how their business has evolved and even thrived through a lot of changing marketplace. Rounding out our panelists, Steve Jones. You heard a couple people mention Fairlife. Steve is the CEO of Fairlife. Fairlife is a value-added dairy company specializing in nutrition-rich milk products for people living a life of healthy well-being. Now, unlike Dwight, Steve's company has been in business now since January 1st. Is that correct?
11.
Of 11, okay. Short period of time. But despite the youthful appearance, Fairlife really brings some pretty impressive credentials to the table. That includes not only a partnership with a group of some of the highest quality dairy farmers in the country, but they also can call Coca-Cola company an investor and their exclusive distribution partner. So we should all be so lucky as to have startup companies with those sort of relationships, and congratulations. With those brief introductions, I want to jump right in. Scott, I'd like to start with you. Was wondering if you could share a little bit more background about Enjoy Life Foods. It was something you conceived of back in college, and what your vision was for the company and how it's evolved since then.
Thanks, Bob, and good afternoon, everyone. So first of all, my background, I started as a commercial banker, actually right out of undergraduate at Indiana University. Actually worked with a number of people in this room. Went back for my MBA at Kellogg in the evening program, and this was summer of 2000. I was taking an entrepreneurship course where you had to get into a group, come up with an idea, write a business plan, present it, get your grade, and move on. And so this was our business plan. And it actually started, the other co-founder of the business, his mother has multiple sclerosis and is on a diet free of many things as a result of having MS. She gave us the idea for the business, said there's not many products in the market. The ones that are out there don't taste very good. Quite frankly, we didn't have a better idea, so we just said, let's go with it. And we jumped in. And after working on it for a number of weeks and kind of looking at really the market in Europe, which was much more developed than it was here in the United States, and starting to understand, we thought, again, longer-term trends, some of the ones that have been talked about earlier today, better-for-you products, transparency, things along those lines. Things started to make sense while we were writing this business plan, that maybe there's really something here. So class ended. Actually, we did get an A on the project, by the way. class ended, and we started doing some focus groups, myself and one other person, and some surveys and so forth. And after doing that for about another 9 months or so, or about 8, 9 months, we decided there was enough there, and I ended up leaving my job. This was March of '01 to start this business. And I'd say there's 3 things right up front that decisions that we made that served us well throughout our history and allowed us to get to the point that we are today. One, when we developed the brand promise, it was not just to be gluten-free. It was taking it a big step beyond that. Our products are free of all common allergens. So there's 8 foods that make up 90% of all food allergies in the United States, and our products are free of every single one of those. It's wheat, dairy, egg, soy, peanuts, tree nuts, shellfish, and fish. Those 8 are actually defined by the FDA as being accounting for 90% of all food allergies in the United States and are classified as the Big 8. So I said, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could own that positioning, having our products be free of all common allergens? Because I really felt that although gluten-free was something that was still, I mean, God, it was still in its infancy stage, I really did see felt that I saw what was going to be coming and knew that just being gluten-free was not going to be enough. It's not that difficult to just do gluten-free. And yes, there is, ultimately, there could be a fat element to it, which was discussed a little bit today. Can gluten-free, can part of that be leveling off? Potentially in some facets it may be. But if we could build this moat around the brand and have this brand positioning that was really difficult to replicate, that would be something special. So that's what we did. So that was number 1. Number 2, we've been a manufacturer since day 1. And that, a lot of times when I mentor other entrepreneurs, I tell them, stay away from manufacturing if you can. We were one of the cases where it totally made sense because we had to ensure the quality nature of the product and that there would be no contamination issues with the product because it all came back to trust and transparency, all the things we've been talking about today. And then the third big one is the brand itself. Enjoy life, the name, the mark, everything about that. Ultimately, that is what sold this business. We call it to Panelists at the end of the day. We built a brand that stood for something that people could identify with. The real value in this business was this Enjoy Life brand.
Thanks, Scott. I'm going to skip over Steve and go to Dwight, where we have the sort of new age, new line company with Scott. Dwight represents, what Chicago has been for many, many years. Dwight, the statistics are pretty clear about how few family businesses make it past the 3rd generation. You represent the 4th generation, and as I understand, the 5th generation is now coming on board the company right now. Can you tell us a little bit more about the history of your company and how you've managed to sustain and even grow your business over the 90-year period that you've been in business?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Bob. Our family business is 91 years old, and as Bob mentioned, it is very unique to get into not only the 3rd generation, but the 4th and 5th generation. We're in the 5th generation right now, and we hope that the 5th generation will be as successful as the previous 4, and we think that they will be. A small family business like ours has a lot of challenges, especially in the protein business. We're very unique in that we do a lot of private label. Our brand years ago was known on the West Coast and in the Detroit area. Our main branded item is Canadian-style bacon. We do a lot with the major QSR restaurants in the United States. Our products are shipped overseas to some of those QSR restaurants in their markets. We do a lot with the military, and really our business plan from generation to generation, if you ask any executive in the company, there's one main goal of Rose Packing, and that's really to survive. I think that's a unique thing that we've all inherited from the previous generations, and it's very important, I think, that you focus on that as a company, we put our label, or we put a lot of different major labels on our product. The only thing that a company our size really has, since brand recognition with us is not outstanding, is the quality of our product and the food safety, and our reputation is the most important. And we try to have brought that through the generations. That's what we're trying to explain and successfully, hopefully, doing to the 5th generation, because without our reputation and the food safety that we provide to the customers and the labels that we put on our products for them, of which you've probably eaten many of them, whether it be in the QSR restaurant field or whether it be in the retail field, is utmost importance to us. And new customers that come on board, our first thing is that I tell them, we really don't want to do business with you until you get to know us and who we are, because in the food service business, trust between a supplier and a customer, I think, is utmost of importance, and that's one thing that we stress in our company. Another unique thing about the family business is that we have 3 other businesses that we own, totally diverse. 2 of them are diverse from the meatpacking business. We also own a large restaurant, so we are in the restaurant business also. So we understand that side of the business.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that is a challenging of the 4. So we are, I think, a little bit unique in that we are diversified in that respect. So that's another area that we have to make sure that the 5th generation is knowledgeable in and is capable of keeping these other companies strong. Again, I think our main thing is that when we talk to our customers, we have to have them feel comfortable with who we are, and food safety obviously is the utmost importance, along with our reputation.
Thanks, Dwight. Steve, as the former chief marketing officer for the Coca-Cola Company, it's kind of hard to call you a newbie, but you are the newbie here. So several of the previous speakers have referenced your company, talking about it being one of the more exciting products that they've seen come out in a while. Tell us a little bit about how you made the transition from the corporate world to the startup world, and what it is about Fairlife that you think is a real winner in that product.
Good afternoon, everybody. I was at the Beverage Forum about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and Al Carey, the president of PepsiCo, was there, and the moderator asked him, well, what are you looking at that's really exciting out there? And he said, I'm looking at Fairlife. He said, I realize that Coke's involved with it, but what they're doing is really, really important. Their innovation, the way they're going to market. And he said, I'm emulating that kind of style with some of our brands, and so I literally got chills about that. So to the question of how does a CMO reporting to the chairman with a G4 become an entrepreneur, you don't. I'm not an entrepreneur. I am a very capable thinker and manager of people, but I'm not the entrepreneur. It was very tough to go from Coke, and I think I'm still on that progress. So my background, I have a very sketchy academic background, and then did about 6 years of social backroom analytics strategy for politicians and political campaigns. But poverty and not being able to feed my kids was not very cool, so I got a job as a brand manager where they were going to at least pay me. I worked for Kimberly-Clark and Unilever, and then I went to Coke, and my life at Coke, took me from brand management to plant operations to division presidents. So I was managing director of the UK and president of Coke Japan and president of the Minute Maid Company before I became chief marketing officer for the chairman. And when you do that, you move further and further and further away from society. You rely more and more and more on the people around you. You lose basic capability of connecting on a day-to-day basis. And so part of my transition from Coke to this world, I screwed up a couple of times. I worked with Morgan Stanley. We bought a company. We managed it well. We sold it well. Moved on to another one, Ace Bakery in Toronto, which we sold to Loblaws. And I was not good at that, but it was a tremendous learning of down to granularity. For instance, I thought that I was getting into the weeds because I knew that day that the tanker of flour was coming. And I met the flour driver down at the gate, and I came in to where he was pumping into the silo. I'm standing there talking to him. I see the gauge. The tank is full. His tank is empty. And I am so proud of myself. I'm down here in the weeds. And the previous owner who we had bought from was watching from a window above, and he screamed down at me, and I had no idea what he was screaming. He came down with a big mallet and started banging the hose that comes out of the tanker into our tank. And he looked at me like scorned at me, and he said, "You know nothing. There was at least 6 other ounces of flour in that." And I realized I had a long way to go to get into the minutia of entrepreneurship. But it's been a struggle. It's been a constant learning. And I at least I know how to behave. I know how to think in terms of leanness and do it yourself, and don't waste, and don't second guess yourself, and move fast. So all of those things have been more learned, but I'm getting better.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Fairlife, because the product itself seems to be what's of interest to a lot of people?
Fairlife. So there's 3 parts to this: the farming community, the 92 farmers. They're called Select Milk Producers, the most progressive contemporary dairy co-op in America. They produce, and I'm not saying this, the government says it, the highest quality milk in America. 92 family farmers who decided to become modern and contemporary. And so in honor of them, I wear jeans wherever I go. Then there's Fairlife that takes that milk and processes it. And our process is, what we own is a fractionation process that allows us to separate the 5 parts of milk: the water, which is 87%, the cream, and farmers have been doing that for 1,000 years. And if you want a little bit more cream, like a 1% or 2%, you put a little bit more cream back in. Well, we figured out how to go into the skim and separate the protein, the minerals, and the lactose, which is the sugar. And just like we held cream over here in this big tank, we put the protein in that tank, and then if you want something more, we look at milk as we increase the good and we decrease the bad. So you take the sugar out, because as the slides have all said, people don't want sugar. They get enough sugar from other things. They want more protein and calcium. We increase that. And so that's really what Fairlife is. So we took these farmers and their invention of this fractionation process, put it into Fairlife, and then we knew we had to go to market. One of the most hardest parts of a business, you can have the biggest idea and create your product in the bathtub, but if you cannot get it on the shelf, you're dead. And so we needed a partner. Long story there, but we ended up with Coke. And now I have 2 loving, nurturing, dysfunctional parents. But at the end of the day, I describe Fairlife as a health and wellness company, and our mission is to bring health and vitality to both people and the planet.
Thank you. Dwight, I wanted to ask you, I was going back through some notes, and we've talked about it a bit here today, but just in the last month, for example, Bloomberg News had a story about Chipotle running out of their top-selling products, the pulled pork, because they dropped a pork supplier who was not adhering to its rigorous set of food standards. Then this week, Chipotle announces that all of the foods across the country will be non-GMO starting immediately. In reaction to some of these efforts, Dunkin' Donuts has made an announcement that they're going to start getting rid of GMO foods. McDonald's has talked about doing the antibiotic-free chickens, et cetera, et cetera. This has a direct impact on your business, obviously. And tell me, how do you react to that, and how does your historical process of meat packing, how is that consistent with this, and how are you having to react?
Well, I think in this day and age now, with all the things we've been talking about, with different statements that have been coming out from the major QSR people and retailers as far as gestation crates and as far as antibiotics and that, since we do not raise the animals or harvest the animals, we obviously our biggest concern is our sourcing. And for a company of our size, one of our biggest challenges to keep the business viable and to survive is obviously being able to source product the way that our customers are looking for it, and also just to stay in business. That's why our philosophy is we treat our suppliers as we do our customers. And I think from a concerned point of view from our company, trying to supply these items to our customers, is that I just want to make sure that before certain statements are made, I think that by major customers, that there has been research done with their suppliers or the growers, the National Pork Producer Council, the National Cattlemen's Association, to make sure from a scientific basis that things are capable of being made in the manner of which they want them made. I think a sourcing problem for us which we're dealing with right now, is gestation-free animals. And traceability is a big factor of that. And all of that down the road is doable as long as the producers are on board with raising animals under those capabilities, and whether scientifically that is the best thing for the welfare of animals. And I can't answer a lot of those questions. There's a lot of opinions that I have. I sit on the National NAMI, the National American Meat Institute Board, and this is discussed time and time again at that level, also with the National Pork Producers Council. Antibiotics obviously is a large word right now that people are concerned about antibiotic and antibiotic free. There's a lot of things that have to be considered when you talk about antibiotic free. You have to think about the humaneness of the animals by not treating the herds, if you will, if the animals do get sick. Again, the answers will be developed, but I think scientifically is where the industry has to go here. They have to tell that to their customers and our customers to make sure that we can deliver the product and the products that the consumers do want. And if not, just educate them to why certain things might not be as possible as they may seem to be.
It seems like it's been hard for the meat packing business or meat companies to communicate some of these things to the consumer that are being communicated by the, obviously at the retail level, but I'm sure you're working on that and getting better at it. So, Scott, you're part of a much bigger organization right now. You talked about how you always wanted to manufacture to be able to protect the integrity of your food. I suspect now, going through the Mandell's distribution system, they're looking at some fairly substantial growth in your products. And my question is, how do you make sure and you, by the way, are non-GMO at the whole company right now. You've achieved that certification. How do you ensure the stability, reliability of your raw material suppliers, particularly as you're going to be growing, who knows how much, 100, 200% over the next couple of years?
Yeah. First of all, I'll say that with Mandell's, what they have determined, rightfully so, is when they looked to acquire us, they wanted to make sure that we kept the integrity of the Enjoy Life brand. that was, first and foremost. And, they look back historically and at some case studies, their own case studies, other case studies in the industry of companies that bought smaller players. They brought them under the fold, and things changed, right? And consumers lost faith in those brands. They wanted to make sure that that did not happen here, which is why they left me, my management team, my entire team in place. And, sure, there were consumers right off the bat, and we were ready for it from a social media standpoint, that were, right when the news came out, concerned at the minimum about what that means for the Enjoy Life brand. And we, the way we answer that and, the way it's going to be is nothing has changed, okay? Our products, our brand will remain non-GMO. Mondelez, yes, they do have GMO products, but the Enjoy Life brand will remain that way completely. We have been investigating throughout this supply chain, making sure that the supply is there from a non-GMO perspective to allow us to continue to grow at the rates that we're going to need to grow and that Mondelez is expecting. So it's just being very diligent, I would say, getting ahead of it. Getting ahead of the growth, making sure that we do not grow faster than the supply chain is ready. We have started to put some of those things in place, actually even before the deal was closed, but now after the deal is closed, even to a greater extent.
Great. Steve, Fairlife has really started as an integrated producer from the start. You have your suppliers, your dairy farmers who are actually owners of the company. You have distribution through one of your owners. There have been other instances of vertical integration going on in the marketplace. For example, Whole Foods has been investing in some of their suppliers from time to time locally. Chipotle recently started financing some farmers who would adhere to their standards. Do you see a trend, consistent with all the traceability and everything else, of more vertical integration going on in the food space, particularly with the manufacturers?
So I'm familiar now with the dairy and a bit with cattle farming, so let me speak to that. The dairy industry is a very, very good industry. There's a lot of very good players, but the average size of a farm in America is still under 200 cows. And it's very, very difficult for them to mass together enough economies of scale to actually invest in any kind of integration. That's why they rely on the co-op. So it's a very fragmented value chain, from the guy who owns the land and the cow and milks it, to the guy who picks it up in his truck, to a processor, to a retailer. And we are the first in the dairy world to integrate all the way from the grass to the glass. I think that we are shaking things up enough that they have got to follow us. Part of our strategy was to be extremely disruptive and to change the landscape enough that the conventional milk players, even the protein or the plant-based protein guys, or even the organics, had to rethink what they were doing. So we shifted the playing field over to here so that we could be a leader, small as we are, nothing compared to the size of them. But we felt that was an important strategic move. Change the landscape, get over here, force them to follow us. I think that there will be a rapid consolidation of dairy farms under larger co-ops, and I believe that those co-ops are going to cut out what today would be considered the processor, and I believe that they will begin to process their own branded products and sell them direct to the retailer. I think that will happen.
Dwight, what about in your business? You mentioned that you don't raise livestock, you don't slaughter, you're a packer. Has there ever been a thought that you would go back and integrate, getting back more into the agricultural side, where you could begin to control your supply chain a little bit better, or is that something that doesn't work?
No,
for
at
you?
our size, that's not a feasible thing. I mean, with our relationships with our major suppliers, we have to obviously talk to them about what our customers and their consumers are wanting from us. And I think that's one of the challenges for us now, is to be able to source the products whether it be antibiotic-free, whether it be gestation crate-free. And again, as I said, there are pros and cons to that on both sides. But our challenge is to hopefully make sure that who we source from are able to buy the animals that are designated gestation-free or antibiotic-free. I think is the pork community going to be able to go to a zero tolerance on antibiotics? I just came from, as I said, a National Pork Producers Council meeting, and I'm not so sure they're mulling that question over now, whether they can go totally to zero tolerance on antibiotics. So there's scientific things, I think, that have to be brought into this. But our challenge, obviously, is to be able to buy those products for us to further process into the consumer items that our customers are demanding.
Thank you. I know we're running a little short of time, so I will throw out one question for everybody in the group, and would love to get your thoughts. Suspect we have some aspiring food entrepreneurs within this group here, and you guys have been at this for a long time, and I'd love to hear what advice you would give to somebody who perhaps has developed a great product and wants to get it out either into the food service or into the retail channel. What are the things that you would, what advice would you give them, based on the mistakes you made, or how would you tell them to go about it today? You want to start, Scott?
First thing I'd say, and I think this was mentioned earlier when a question was asked on this, make sure you know your numbers more than anything. Make sure that there's enough margin built in, so after you pay out everybody, the middleman and the retailer and the consumer can buy it at a decent price, that you're making enough money at the end of the day, and that's going to be able to generate then more sales, because it becomes an endless cycle. If you have the margin, then you're going to be able to put it back into marketing, which is going to allow us to continue to grow the top line. So that's a key one. And I would just say, secondly, I think from an entrepreneur's standpoint, you want to go where people aren't going. You want to, if everyone's headed in one direction, you probably want to go the other direction, because that space is going to get really crowded really, really soon. So try to figure out a way to make yourself unique, build that moat around your brand or whatever you are trying to build, so that you have some runway and that you have something defensible and that people will want to pay for at the end of the day.
And don't run out of cash.
And don't run out of cash.
Steve, how about you?
So I look at let me go in a different direction. We're in the middle of a raging debate in society, this raging debate about food and beverages and what we're going to eat in the future and how we're going to feed the planet by 2050. It's a raging, it's as big as any social movement, whether it's the sexual revolution, whether it's the unrest in the Middle East. It's an aggressive, emotional argument. And you've got science on one side and emotional philosophy on the other side. So my advice to the emerging entrepreneur who wants to get into this business is something kind of what Scott said earlier, is you got to pick your positioning. It's changing so fast, and this raging debate is moving so fast. Positioning of what your business is, what your promise and what your brand story better be real, and you better be able to back it up for a sustainable amount of time, because the consumer is going to see right through it if all you're doing is picking all of these choice little words and culling together all of these trends and try to say, hey, here's my thing. It better be real. If it's not, you will fail.
Dwight, I'm going to come at it a little differently from you. I don't know what advice you're giving to the fifth generation of Rose Packing right now, whether you're encouraging them or discouraging them from coming into the business. Obviously, the company's been around for a long time. It wouldn't appear that you're going to be a seller, and how do you, as a fourth generation, bringing on a fifth generation, monetize your investment in the company, your time and all of that, and what do you say to the next generation?
Well, I think the main thing is to try to explain to them what got us to where we are. One thing that we've always been able to do, and again, our goal is not to grow to certain leaps and bounds. Again, as I said, our goal is to survive, and survival means to find your niche. We've had to change our business model over the last 15 to 20, 25 years a lot. We were never into the fully cooked products that we are in today. We do multi-species in our plant now, different allergens. That makes food safety even more of a challenge for us. But we have gotten into the fully cooked turkey sausage. We've gotten into the chicken patty, gourmet chicken patty business along, but we're mainly a pork processor. So I think those are the things that you have to continually look at. You have to continually look at what your customers' needs are, and hopefully you can be flexible enough and make sure you're flexible enough. And that's what I try to tell these kids. Don't, be narrow-sighted. Make sure you leave all your options open. Our product development department is always at work. It never sits idle, and especially with our customer base. And I think that's the most important thing, is to keep your company flexible. Make sure, again, that your reputation is the most important thing you have in the food safety that you provide to your customers, whether it be your own brand or a private label brand, is of utmost importance. And I think if you keep those values, again, this country is the only country in the world that's going to feed the world. And we have to make sure that our industry stays scientifically stable and does the right thing and stays flexible in the type of products that not only the U.S. market needs, but also what the world market needs, and do that in the best manner possible.
And it doesn't appear that meat proteins are going away anytime soon. So I think we'll open it up just because we're just a little bit over time, but it's probably a good time to ask a couple of questions here. And we start, Jim?
Steve, I have a question. Whole Foods and Chobani got into a battle over GMO, and Whole Foods kicked Chobani off the shelves because they wouldn't go to non-GMO feed. I'm just curious about fairlife. Are there any requirements around GMO or organic, or how are you addressing those issues?
We see the issue as very important and very serious. We approach it as scientists. We're a very science-backed company. We also approach it as veterinarians. Our founder's a veterinarian, and as parents, and what would we do for our children? We think about the aspect of what is going to happen in 2050 with 10 billion people and how are we going to feed them. So we have the purest milk, which is even more pure than organic milk, but we do feed our cows genetically modified corn, soya, and alfalfa. We do that for a lot of reasons, which we are prepared to defend, which we think are right, but we don't think that everybody else is wrong. I think there are many approaches to good farming and good food, but we believe in what we're doing with GMOs. We also give our cows antibiotics because we think it's obscene to let them die just because they got pneumonia. So we can treat them and take them out of the herd, give them antibiotics for 5 days, wait 10 days until it's right out of their system, and we do our own tests. And when it's less than 1 part per billion in their blood, we will allow them to come back into the herd, perfectly good, rather than kill the cow. So we believe antibiotics are fine. But at the end of the day, our milk has no
Yeah, they cut us off.
That was,
Forgot
yeah.
to pay the bill,
There
Craig.
we go.
Put another quarter in.
Steve, I think they're trying to tell us something.
Yeah, get off stage. We want to drink.
Yeah, I think they're trying to tell us something.
That's our belief. I'll stop there. So we have our cows eat GMOs. There's no GMO in the milk. There's no antibiotic in the milk. The milk is very, very pure. So we feel very comfortable about our decision to do that. And we know of where we speak because we are also the largest organic farmers in America. And we can test our organic milk and the stress levels of our cows versus the way in which we pamper our conventional cows.
Back there, I think it's Will.
Got a question for Scott, talking about the big age of the food allergies, wheat, dairy. Where are you and where is Enjoy Life on A1 versus A2 protein conversation and dairy allergies, lactose intolerance?
We haven't gotten much into that conversation, to be quite honest. A1, A2. I mean, we are adding protein to our products. We are trying to bring out products with more protein, i.e. we're actually coming out with a line of baking mixes this month, which actually have probiotics in them and added protein. As of now, I would say we don't have a set position on A1, A2 type protein.
We do. It's a pile of crap. There is nothing different.
How do you really feel?
The protein casein is the same.
Yes, Rachel.
So there is a certain segment of the population that is taking issue with that. I would say overall it's a pretty small percentage. I'd kind of put them into three buckets. There's this small sliver, people that feel like we sold to the devil and will never buy our products again. Then there's a much bigger group of people that say, okay, we'll watch and wait, and you're saying you're going to stay true to your brand promise. You know, we're watching. And then there's the others that don't care. You know, at the end of the day, I think it's a lot easier to try and change the big companies inside out rather than from the outside, right? So that's part of my goal over the next 10, 15 years. Hopefully we can change Mondelez and get them thinking differently. You know, I mean, their position's not going to change on GMOs, or it's not going to change anytime soon, and that's fine. It's science-based. That's the way that they look at it, and I'm not here to say it's right or it's wrong to have GMOs in your product. The one thing I believe is that the consumer at the end of the day has the right to know if there is GMOs, and you know that's something that I think and I believe over time will happen, you know, we just have to show at the end of the day that we're going to stay true to our brand promise. And at the end of the day, we will, because like I tell the consumers that say, oh, everything's going to change, the brand's going to change. Mondelez bought us because of our brand promise, not in spite of it. They could have bought anybody else if they didn't want a brand that was non-GMO and free of all common allergens, but they bought Enjoy Life Foods because of who we are. So that's, you know, we're just going to keep moving forward with the way we do business. And for those that we lose, I think it's relatively small, and I guess there's nothing we can do about that.
For me, I look at it as I don't worry about Coke being a partner. I'm focused on Fairlife, the fact that we have great, real quality milk, and we give people 50% more protein and calcium, and we take the sugar out. I've made a promise to them. The farmers have made a promise to them. The greatness about having Coke is we can make that more accessible to every corner of the country and in the world, and nobody else could do that for us. that's their role, and they're doing a very excellent job at it. But I keep focused on the Fairlife story and try not to get drawn into whether or not 20% of the population hate large corporations and don't trust them.
You have a final comment, Dwight?
Well, I think that they're correct. I think it's the story you tell. You have to keep telling your story. There's a lot of different interest groups in that seem to get more press than sometimes we tell our own story. And I think that's very important for the food industry to tell the story and to defend the products that they make. You know, we make the safest food products in the world, and sometimes I don't think we tell that story enough. And just as these gentlemen will, just because they've been acquired by a larger company, it may give them the means to be able to tell that story even more so than they are now. And I think that's what they're going to do, and I think that's what you have to do. And sometimes I just don't think we tell that story enough, and we let outside influences sort of control our businesses more than it should be done. We've got a good story to tell about the safe food that we make, and I don't think we should be afraid to tell that story.
That's great. On that note, I think we will end the panel. I'm sure everybody's ready to get over to the reception. I want everybody to give a big hand to this panel, a great group here. Thank you.